We're keeping him honest tonight in a place we'd frankly rather not be, reporting on things the former president said. It is familiar territory and a familiar dilemma. Debunk it and risk amplifying his lies, or ignore him and risk letting them spread. Tonight, due to the nature of his remarks, we're giving them some scrutiny, even at the risk, I should say, of giving him the attention that he so desperately craves. That's because in what he said at a gathering of conservatives and on Fox News over the weekend, he's opened a new and dangerous chapter in our post-insurrection world. It's one in which he fully embraces, not just lying about it or downplaying it or fighting any investigation of it. He is now openly, affectionately almost, embracing the worst attack on democracy by Americans since the Civil War, the incident that made him the first president ever to be impeached twice.
You had over 1 million people there. They were there for one reason, the rigged election. They felt the election was rigged. That's why they were there. And they were peaceful people. These were great people. And they're military people, and they're police officers, and they're construction workers, and they're tremendous, in many cases, tremendous people. Tremendous people.
Former president yesterday on Fox News. Tremendous people, he says, not on both sides, as he said about Charlottesville, in which he offered praise for those who marched with neo-Nazis as well as those who marched against them. No, now he is only praising one side, this side. The people, some of whom went to his rally, heard him give what he now describes as a, quote, mild-mannered speech. Then there's something else, lying about the size of the crowd there that day, because he has to lie about the crowd size, of course. This is what he's always done. Not noting the irony, of course, that bragging about or lying about the number of people trying to undermine democracy, that's not really a great look. But there's another place he took it that you have to hear for yourself to believe.
You had over 1 million people there, which the press doesn't like to report at all because it shows too much activity, too much spirit and faith and love. There was such love at that rally. The crowd was unbelievable, and I mentioned the word love. The love in the air. I've never seen anything like it.
Again, the idea that there were 1 million people is not true, and it's hard to articulate how depraved it is to describe a day that ended with more than 140 members of law enforcement hurt, wounded, some maimed. The love, he says, as if he's serenading himself, and maybe he is, as you consider that so-called love. Just take a look at this new video we got today of the attack, and we're playing it in its violent, profane entirety, because that's precisely the way it was. So loving. Patriots. That's what he calls those people. 27 seconds of what must have been the longest day of those officers' lives. One, as you know, died the next day, and many, many others now living with debilitating injuries, not to mention the memories. The former president only sees love. He also repeated the lie that no one was armed. Several weapons charges have been filed. A lot of folks just were allowed to leave without being searched or arrested. Functional pipe bombs were, of course, discovered at several locations, as was an alleged weapons cache at a nearby hotel. And also, people made weapons out of things you wouldn't ordinarily think of as weapons. Flagpoles. They took batons. They had stun guns. They used whatever they could to attack law enforcement, to attack democracy. It's what else, though, the former president said that pushes this beyond his typical dishonesty that we all are used to. He's now fully invested in making a martyr out of a QAnon fanatic who was part of a mob trying to break into a secure part of the Capitol.
And by the way, while you're at it, who shot Ashley Babbitt? Why are they keeping that secret? Who was the person that shot an innocent, wonderful, incredible woman, a military woman, right in the head, and there's no repercussions?
It's not the first time he's misattributed where Ms. Babbitt was fatally wounded. According to the coroner's report, she was hit in the left shoulder, and it's a tragedy that her life was taken. The disrespect, though, for this person's family is stunning. To be so in love with the way that last line sounds, shot in the head, that he just keeps saying it regardless. Do you think he actually cares about Ashley Babbitt? Do You think he actually knows about her life? I don't think so. As you know, the mob she was part of was trying to batter their way into the Speaker's lobby of the House. On the other side of that door were members of Congress being evacuated. What would have happened if she had gotten through and the mob had gotten through? You can figure it out. In other words, the mob was a direct and immediate threat to their lives, or at least that's what the officer thought, who was trying to protect them. Then, after praising her almost as a martyr and calling for the officer who shot her to be named, even though he's already allegedly gotten death threats, the former president went on to suggest the officer was assigned to protect a specific Democratic official. Today, a law enforcement source said otherwise. The former president also neglects to say the shooting was investigated and the officer cleared of legal wrongdoing, which, to him, is hardly the point. He wants a martyr, not a rioter. He wants the outburst of rage to be seen as the summer of love, just as he wants a free and fair election to be sullied. A free and fair election in which there was massive turnout on both sides. It was actually a remarkable election, and Republicans did very well. He didn't. The president at that time did not do well. He lost. We've seen all the threads. We're seeing them all come together, and that is what is different tonight. Joining us now, conservative attorney George Conway. George, does this feel like an escalation from the former president, or part of, I guess, the next stage in rewriting history? Not just, the lies themselves, but the danger of it now?
I think there's an escalation, but there's also a coming of full circle. Trump, amidst the blizzard of lies that we've seen from him over the past few days, both on that Fox interview and in the CPAC speech, he actually is uttering one fundamental truth. He's telling the truth in one fundamental way, which is about how he feels about January 6th. He did say how he felt on January 6th when he said, "We love you, I love you." And he said that, "Remember this day forever," he tweeted. And he said that these people were wonderful people. He said all of that on January 6th. And as Mitch McConnell said in his floor speech on February 13th, Trump loved this. He loved what happened on January 6th because it was all about him. These people were fighting for him. They were fighting against democracy and against free elections, to be sure, but they were fighting for him, and that's what he cares about. And he's gone right back to that. And by claiming that Ashley Babbitt was innocent when in fact she was in the middle of committing a bunch of federal felonies when she was shot in the shoulder and not in the head. He's continuing to lie about the election, lying about the crowd size. He's now back, there's no remorse. There was never any remorse. He held it back a little bit after the criticism the torrent of criticism that fell upon him on January 6th and 7th and his social media deplatforming. But he's out there on the loose now.
And, because he is shameless, a shameless figure and willing to say anything and to repeat it endlessly. He's been repeating it, in the dining room at Mar-a-Lago, by the pool at Mar-a-Lago, anywhere he wanders in Mar-a-Lago or anywhere else. He's been repeating it to anybody who will listen and probably boring people silly with it over time. But because he's willing to repeat it much longer than anyone else is willing to even want to think about it, in the end, he's able to convince people because he just repeats the lie over and over and is so shameless, he kind of exhausts everybody.
Right, shameless, remorseless, you can call it any number of things. And the problem is, at this point, is even if he shut up tomorrow, even if he went away tomorrow and never spoke about this again, which is not going to happen, it's all out there now. He's created basically this cultish adherence to the big lie that's going to be could almost be kind of a generational thing, like the stab in the back theory that prevailed in Germany in the Weimar Republic. It's a dangerous and scary thing.
Also, that he has turned what was, and Tom Friedman has written about this, what he has turned, a remarkable election day in which, in the midst of a pandemic, at great risk themselves, people came out and voted. And states around the country made it easier for people to get to the polls, to mail in ballots, to have in some cases 24-hour poll opens, to have drive-in voting, and there wasn't widespread voter fraud. And and there was huge Republican turnout and huge Democratic turnout in the midst of a pandemic. The idea that he managed to turn that into this election that, in the minds of his supporters, was rigged and with widespread voter fraud, and now that Republicans in state houses across the country are actually passing restrictive, changes based on that lie, it's just stunning that he has done this.
Right. This should be the aftermath of last year's election should have been a celebration of democracy. That so many people chose to participate, and that they chose to participate, as you say, in the middle of a pandemic, and that they had so many ways to cast their votes and did vote, and it went rather smoothly, except for the fact that we had these baseless challenges that were made in Congress on January 6th, and then the attack on Congress on January 6th. The fact of the matter is, he brought 60-odd lawsuits, and he only won a piece of one of them on narrow grounds that didn't involve fraud. It was just a handful of absentee ballots, and the question was, how many days do people get to cure mistakes that on things that they wrote on the envelopes? And all these courts, including many Republican judges appointed to the United States Courts of Appeals, for example, and the United States District Courts by John Trump, they rejected these claims and said, hey, where's the evidence? And the fact that there was no evidence of fraud should have been something that was celebrated. And instead, they've chosen to lie. Rudy Giuliani is probably going to lose his license to practice law because he told so many lies about the election, and lies that Trump continues to repeat. And today in Michigan, a hearing was held by a federal judge where other lawyers are probably going to get into trouble. Lynn Wood and Sidney Powell for filing baseless claims.
George Conway, I appreciate you being on. Thank you.
Thank you.